Howdy, my name is Nonat, and welcome to my deep dive into the Swashbuckler class for Pathfinder 2nd Edition. The Swashbuckler is honestly a class I have not looked into that much. I've never really thought I really want to play a Swashbuckler. I've always thought, if I want to hit heavy and hard, I'll play a fighter or barbarian. If I want to hit fast and agile, I'll play a monk or a rogue. I never really thought about the Swashbuckler, but looking into it, it's a pretty interesting class, and Paizo's done an amazing job of differentiating it from the other martial classes. It's also a class that definitely belongs in the Advanced Player's Guide, as this would not be an amazingly easy class for a new player. Now, it's not Oracle levels of complicated, but it's still a little bit beyond your typical move and strike martial class. Let's go ahead and just jump right into it, shall we? I don't got anything else to say in the preface. With their key ability score being Dexterity, they don't even have Strength as an option, interestingly enough. Most martial classes can pick between Strength and Dex, but Swashbuckler is always stuck with Dex. They don't even have a feature like the Rogue to change it to something else. I believe this actually makes them the only martial class in the game with one key ability score choice. They are a bit more durable than a rogue, getting 10 plus constitution hit points every single level. That's the same as a fighter, so they are much swifter than fighters, but they're just as durable. Also similar to fighters, they are experts in perception, as well as expert in 2 out of 3 of the saving throws. They are only trained in fortitude, but an expert in reflex and will saves. They come trained in acrobatics, trained in another free skill based on their subclass, and they get 4 plus intelligence bonus skills, making them somewhat of a skill junkie. Still nowhere close to the investigator or the rogue, but as far as a martial class goes, 4 plus intelligence is a solid number of starting skills. They're trained in all simple weapons, martial weapons, and unarmed combat, but they're only trained in unarmored and light armor. This really isn't too big a deal, as a Swashbuckler is always going to be very dexterity forward, so medium and heavy armor wouldn't be super helpful, with your dexterity usually being at least a 16. And moving on to sort of their defining feature, their panache. Or as some might say, panache. No one says that. Cut that out, that was a bad joke. Panache is a special buff that a Swashbuckler can only grant themselves. They get Panache by performing daring acts of bravado. All Swashbucklers can gain Panache by succeeding at the Tumble Through action, and depending on your subclass, you also gain access to a second skill action that, when successful, grants you Panache. Additionally, at the GM's discretion, should the Swashbuckler do something surprisingly brave, heroic, and just really cool, the examples they give are swinging on a chandelier or sliding down some curtains in dramatic fashion, that might also grant Panache. But keep in mind, Panache really only occurs in combat. If you do something out of combat, you won't gain Panache. A Swashbuckler basically always wants to have Panache, because it gives a plethora of bonuses, including a 5-foot status bonus to movement speed, a +1 circumstance bonus to tumble through checks, and any other skill action that grants you Panache. It activates your Precise Strikes class feature, increasing the damage of all of your attacks while you have Panache, and it lets you perform finishers. Finishers are a Swashbuckler-specific action that deal massive bonus damage, but when used, get rid of your Panache and you have to gain it again. Like I said before, each style has an additional action beyond Tumble Through that can grant them Panache. So let's go ahead and look at these Swashbuckler styles, which are the subclass. These subclasses don't grant quite as much as some other classes, but they're still pretty useful. They each grant you a trained proficiency in a skill, sometimes a skill feat, and a new way to gain Panache. Starting with the Battle Dancer. Battle Dancers are trained in performance and gain the Fascinating Performance skill feat. Fascinating Performance basically lets you perform to draw the attention and inflict the fascinated condition on observers. Only one observer at level 1. During an encounter, should you use the Perform action and beat an observer's will DC, you gain Panache. What's important to note is that the Fascinating Performance skill feat does work in combat to fascinate opponents, but they only become fascinated if you critically succeed. However, to gain Panache, you only need to normal succeed. The braggart is simple and my favorite. You're trained in intimidation and gain panache whenever you demoralize an opponent. I love demoralize in Pathfinder 2e, so if I were to play a swashbuckler, it would probably be a braggart. The fencer gains trained in deception and gains panache whenever they feint or create a diversion. This gives the fencer 3 rules as written ways to gain panache, which is really solid. But the gymnast has it beat, getting trained in athletics and gaining panache whenever they grapple, shove, or trip an opponent. The only downside with this is that these are all strength-based, and you can't have an 18 starting strength, with dex being your main ability score. The same can be said for the fencer as well, as feinting and creating a diversion use charisma. But still, having 4 unique options on how to gain panache is incredibly powerful. And the final swashbuckler style is the wit style, which grants you trained in diplomacy, as well as the bon mot skill feat. Should you ever succeed at using the bon mot action, you gain panache. Whenever you have panache active, you also gain the precise strike feature. Precise strike only works with agile or finesse attacks, but all of those attacks deal 2 additional precision damage. With Precise Strike, should you use a finisher, that finisher deals 2d6 additional damage. All of this bonus damage goes up at levels 5, 9, 13, and 17, meaning that at level 17, you will be dealing 6 additional damage per hit and dealing 6d6 bonus damage on a finisher. Speaking of finisher, the only finisher you can start with at level 1 is Confident Finisher. For 1 action, you make a strike that could be used with Precise Strike, meaning it needs to be agile or finesse, and it just gains a simple fail effect. Even if you normal fail your attack roll, you deal damage equal to half of your Precise Strike damage. The fail effect is, if you miss your attack with a normal fail, you deal half of your Precise Strike damage, which is 1 plus half of 2d6. That's not bad. Hey guys, future note out here. I need to make a little clarification. For the rest of this class guide, I thought that finishers did your base Precise Strike damage and 2d6. It is not exactly that way. Instead of the flat Precise Strike damage, you deal 2d6. So with Confident Finisher here, you would deal 2d6 additional damage. The flat 2 precision damage does not get added to your finisher. This comes up a few more times in the guide. I will put up text on the screen when it does to remind you, but just remember that the flat precision damage does not get added to finishers. It is converted into dice. The Swashbuckler has some pretty consistent ways to get off damage, and I dig it. As usual, we'll be going over feats later. They get skill feats at 2nd level, general feats at 3rd level. At 3rd level, they're already an expert in every single saving throw, so while they can't wear anything beyond light armor, the Swashbuckler is a surprisingly defensive class, pretty good at resisting effects. Also at 3rd level, they gain a very unique version of Attack of Opportunity, known as Opportune Riposte. Should an opponent critically miss you with a strike and they are within reach of your melee attack, you get to attack them. Alternatively, if you don't want to attack them, you can disarm them instead. This freedom is incredible, and being able to disarm as a reaction is very powerful. If they crit failed their first attack on a turn, and you just knock the weapon out of their hand, you just shut them down. They're either going to have to attack you unarmed, or spend an action to pick that weapon back up. Really good stuff here. They get skill increases at 3rd level, and they get stylish tricks at 3rd level. They get a lot at 3rd level, y'all. Stylish Tricks is sort of a super weakened version of the way rogues get skill feats every level. Swashbucklers do get bonus skill feats, but only at levels 3, 7, and 15. Additionally, these skill feats have restrictions, as they can only either be for acrobatics or the skill you gained proficiency from your subclass. So if you're a wit swashbuckler, your stylish trick skill feats can only be for acrobatics or diplomacy. It's still cool though, you can get basically skill feats for free to support your swashbuckler style without sacrificing your normal skill feats. I like it. Also at 3rd level, swashbucklers get even faster with Vivacious Speed. Their panache speed goes up by an additional 5 feet, granting a plus 10-foot speed bonus with panache. Additionally, every 4 levels after that, your panache gets another 5-foot speed bonus, meaning at level 19, you gain an additional 30 movement speed whenever you have panache. Move over, monks. Swashbucklers are coming for you. On top of this, you permanently gain half of your panache move speed bonus rounded down to your base movement speed. So at level 3, your base movement speed goes up by 5, and whenever you use panache, you get the other 5 of that move speed. I know it sounds a little confusing, but basically at level 3, your 5-foot movement speed bonus increases to plus 10 feet movement bonus, and you permanently get 1/2 of your panache movement speed bonus at all times, even if you don't have panache. Level 5 is pretty boring for swashbucklers as they get ability, well, it's not boring, you get ability boosts. They get an ancestry feat, and they get weapon expertise, which is always nice. Increasing accuracy with your weapons is great. Level 7 increases reflex saves to master, and they now auto-crit succeed any normal success on a reflex save. They also get weapon specialization for a bit of extra damage, which does stack with your precise strikes, so at level 7, I believe you're dealing an additional 5 damage on every single one of your attacks. Pretty solid. At 9th level, they gain Exemplary Finisher, which augments any finisher action you make. The augment is dependent on your subclass. If you are a battle dancer, you can take the step action for free right after the finisher. This would be great for repositioning if you finish off a foe and need to get closer to someone else, or get away. The Braggart, in my opinion, is probably one of the worst exemplary finishers, but if you use a finisher on a target and they are currently immune to your demoralize, they lose their immunity. This is okay. It gives you the ability to re-demoralize them to regain panache in a sort of infinite cycle, which is pretty cool. You can effectively demoralize, finisher, demoralize, finisher, which could be kind of fun, not gonna lie. The fencers, I think, could have been a little stronger. If you use a finisher on an opponent, they become flat-footed until your next turn. Not until the end of your next turn, so at the start of your next turn, they become normal again, but this does make them flat-footed to all of your party members. Maybe it would have been overpowered to make them flat-footed to that finisher as well, but unfortunately the way it's written, you perform the finisher, and then they become flat-footed. So chances are you're not going to get a lot out of this, but your teammates might. The Gymnast is an awesome idea where if your target is grappled or proned or restrained, you deal bonus damage on your finisher equal to twice the number of weapon damage die. Now this isn't a lot, but it might be an extra 2, 4, 6 extra damage, and I just love the idea that you've got them in a headlock with your knife, and you're just finishing them while you have them grabbed. It's a pretty brutal sight to think about. And the Wit Swashbuckler sort of plays into the fact that you might be using it to taunt your opponents into forcing them to attack you, because you inflict a -2 penalty to attack rolls against you from that target. If you're mano-a-mano with someone, this is fantastic, but if they can easily ignore you and go for someone else, this is completely useless. Also at 9th level, the Swashbuckler class DC goes up. Woo! Level 11's Continuous Flare is kind of a weird one. Should you perform an action during exploration, basically not in combat, and it would normally grant you panache, you gain a +1 circumstance bonus to all further skill actions that would grant you panache until the scene changes. This is definitely more useful for someone like the Braggart or the Wit Swashbuckler, as diplomacy and intimidation are used a lot more out of combat. This would require your GM being kind of nice, as technically you need to bon mot or demoralize to gain panache, but maybe they'll say, oh, you intimidated him, you did demoralize him and scared him, so take the +1 to all future intimidation checks in this exploration scene. Until you leave the mayor's office, you get +1 to those checks. It's a weird bonus, but I kinda like it. It does state, unfortunately, that you do lose this bonus should it shift into an encounter. So if you intimidate the mayor, and your GM's like, cool, take your continuous flare, +1 to all intimidation checks, but then the mayor attacks you, you don't get that +1 anymore to intimidation checks in combat. Kind of unfortunate. Level 13, Improved Evasion, gives them legendary in reflex saves already. You can no longer critically fail, and should you normal fail against a damaging reflex save, you still only take half damage. This is so good at level 13. They also get light armor expertise, increasing their armor proficiency to expert, and weapon mastery, increasing it, guess what, to master. Also, greater weapon specialization, which means you're dealing a ton of bonus precision damage and bonus damage on all of your attacks with precise strikes. That's really, really cool. That's one thing I like about the Swashbuckler is their damage is so consistent. With agile and finesse weapons, sometimes you sacrifice big damage numbers because the damage die are smaller, but with all of the bonus damage that Swashbucklers get from precise strikes and finishers, their damage is super consistently high, or at least medium. While a fighter can roll, 3d12, he can still roll 3 1s plus a meager bonus. The Swashbuckler, even if he rolls 3 1s, he's getting some huge bonuses from precise strike. Keen Flare is really good as a class feature. I think this is actually a barbarian feat that they just gave to the Swashbuckler. So long as you're a master in your weapon, which I don't know how you wouldn't be at this point unless it's an advanced weapon, you treat a 19 as a critical success, just like a 20. Now, it's not quite like a 20 in that a 19 doesn't bump your success rate up. If you roll a 19 and fail, it doesn't make it a success. But if you roll a 19 and succeed, it makes it a critical success. Ethereal Confidence bumps your class DC up to Master and grants all of your strikes with Precise Strike active the same failure effect as the Confident Finisher. This means, should you miss a normal attack, you still get to deal half of your Precise Strike's bonus precision damage. And there's a feat later on that allows you to miss and deal your full Precise Strike precision damage. So at level 19, all of your attacks, unless you critically fail, are dealing damage. Really, really nice. Also, they get Mastery and Light Armor. Woo! And with the class features done and out of the way, we can finally move on to... Who are you?
My name is Nonata Montoya. You reviewed my class. Prepare to die.
I actually haven't finished reviewing the class yet.
Ah, I see. My apologies. Let me know when you finish the class, and then prepare to die.
Okay, thanks. Bye?
Did you tell them all to subscribe yet?
Oh, no, thank you. Don't forget to like and subscribe, guys. I guess, maybe leave a comment?
Amateur.
That was really weird. How did you get in my... Level 1's Buckler expertise is pretty simple. Whenever you raise a Buckler, you gain +2 to your armor class instead of the normal +1. This one is more for flavor than anything, I think, as it really doesn't make the Buckler better than a steel shield for a Swashbuckler. It just means you can, a Buckler instead of a shield, which, flavor-wise, makes a lot more sense. Disarming Flare is pretty okay. Should you get a success, but not a critical success on your disarm check, the effect that normally only lasts until the start of your target's next turn now lasts until the end of your next turn. This makes it so your disarm attempts have a bonus and their usage with that weapon gets a -2. So this basically inflicts a -2 to attack rolls until the start of your next turn. Until the end of your next turn, sorry. They can spend an action to readjust their grip and get rid of the effect, but that means you got rid of an action on their turn. Additionally, this is fantastic for the Gymnast, as this gives them another way to get panache. Should they successfully disarm an opponent, they gain panache, so the Gymnast can now gain panache from tumble through, grapple, shove, trip, and disarm. So cool. Dueling Parry, it's on a ton of other classes. As long as you're not wielding anything in your left hand and it's open, you can assume a parrying stance to gain +2 to armor class until the start of your next turn. Flying Blade is some casual thrown weapon support. So long as you have this feat, you can apply your Precise Strike precision damage to thrown, agile, or finesse weapons. You can even make finishers with those weapons. That could be a really cool Swashbuckler to play, just throwing knives everywhere. Really fun. Focused Fascination is a direct upgrade for the Battle Dancer. You no longer need to critically succeed to fascinate someone in combat. You can fascinate them on a normal success. The downside is this only works if you're using it on a single target. Once your proficiency with performance goes up, you can target multiple creatures with fascinating performance. But this feat only works if you choose to fascinate one single target. Kind of unfortunate, because fascinated's not that strong of a condition. Goading Feint grants you some additional options when you successfully or critically successfully feint against a target. Instead of causing them to be flat-footed, you can give them a -2 penalty to their attack rolls. Now, these do only affect attacks against you, which is sort of a pattern I'm seeing from the Swashbuckler. It seems like a very selfish class. Aside from the Fencer inflicting flat-footed, pretty much everything about the Swashbuckler has been about self-defense, self-preservation, and targeting your target for a finisher. They also get Nimble Dodge, just like a rogue, +2 to armor class if you use your reaction on an attack you can see. One for All is okay. For a single action, you can use the Aid action on an ally, and no matter what skill action they're attempting, you can roll Diplomacy to aid them. Additionally, if you are the Wit Swashbuckler, then you gain Panache so long as what they were attempting is a very hard DC. Now, a very hard DC is naturally very hard. Even at level 1, I think a very hard DC might be a DC 18-19, so could be a little rough. Swashbucklers, once again stealing from the rogue, get You're Next. As a reaction, if you finish off an enemy, you can point to another enemy within 30 feet and demoralize them. Interestingly, this one doesn't say 30 feet. Maybe I'm remembering wrong, but I thought the rogue You're Next was limited to 30-foot range. Once you're legendary in Intimidation, you can do this as a free action instead of a reaction. So it's pretty easy to see that they basically made a level 1 feat for every single subclass of Swashbuckler. They're all pretty much, you picked this subclass, here's your feat, your Intimidation feat, your Diplomacy feat. After You is hilarious and so worth it. As a free action, you volunteer to go last in initiative, and you gain Panache right at the start of combat for doing so. Now, you can't do this after you roll initiative. You can't roll your Nat 1 initiative and go, after you. You have to do it before you roll. But hey, that's really cool, and depending on the encounter, this could be worth it. Going last can be hindering, but it also lets you analyze the battlefield, everyone gets to move, and as long as you're in an advantageous position, after you is really solid. Antagonize is a hilarious option for the Swashbuckler. Should you demoralize a foe, they cannot reduce their frightened condition below 0 until they make a hostile action against you. Now, if they can't see you for one round, it still disappears. But as long as you can keep your distance between them, and especially with your Panache movement speed, they probably can't keep up with you. You can just keep them frightened 1 for like the whole combat, especially if you're a throwing weapon Swashbuckler, just moving faster than them and throwing weapons in your wake. Oh, that would be a fun build. Charmed Life is stupidly powerful. As a reaction, if you have not rolled against a saving throw, you get +2 to that saving throw. You need to have a 14 charisma, but that's it. There's no limit on how often you can use this, how many times per day. It's just +2 to saving throws. Now, granted, next level you will get your attack of opportunity, and you won't necessarily want to give up that reaction, but this is insane. Remember, also at level 3, they're already an expert in every saving throw. If you forego your attacks of opportunity, you can basically be a master in 1 saving throw per turn at level 2. 3. That's nuts. Finishing follow-through is fantastic. Should you use a finishing move and it drops your opponent to 0 hit points, you gain Panache back. This just lets you keep going. As long as your finisher always kills your target, you will never run out of Panache. Absolutely brutal. Tumble Behind is pretty good. As long as you successfully tumble through someone, which grants you Panache, that target is flat-footed against your next attack. So this increases your accuracy and grants you bonus damage if you didn't already have Panache. A really good setup. Unbalancing Finisher is really solid for you and your entire team. It is a finisher, so it gets the bonus damage from your precise strikes, and should you hit and actually deal damage, the target of that attack is flat-footed until the end of your next turn. That is a really good finisher. The only difference between this and the basic finisher is that if you miss, nothing happens. You don't get the failure effect of confident finisher, but that's still so good. A full round of flat-footed is busted. If you have a rogue on your team, have fun. Level 4's Flamboyant Athlete requires you to be an expert in athletics, but as long as you have Panache, you gain a multitude of athletics-related bonuses. You gain climb and swim speeds equal to half your land speed, which is already so busted. That means you don't need to roll athletics to climb or swim when you have panache. The DC of your high and long jumps decrease by 10, meaning you can just jump 10 feet farther. And even your normal one action leap gets an upgrade, allowing you to jump 15 feet for one action if your speed is less than 30. But since you're a swashbuckler, your speed is gonna be 30 unless you're a dwarf. And then you can jump 20 feet horizontally with one action. No running start, nothing. This is a crazy, crazy good feat. The only downside is that most of this would be useful in exploration and dungeon delving and stuff like that, and you can't typically gain panache in those situations. But hey, in those fights where you have like a chasm between you and some enemies, that's really good if you can leap that chasm with panache in the middle of a fight. Guardian's Deflection is basically nimble dodge for an adjacent ally. I'm honestly surprised they didn't just make it like nimble dodge where you can just gain the AC, but no, the trigger is specifically your ally within your reach is struck by an attack, and a +2 to armor class would turn a critical hit into a hit or a hit into a miss. You can use your reaction to give them that bonus and turn the crit into a normal or the normal into a miss. If your +2 armor class would do nothing, you can't even use this reaction. So this is some weird metagaminess, so you can't like use the reaction and then it's not enough. But I mean, mechanically this makes it better as you can never use it and fail. Guardian's Deflection will always work because it can only be used when it will work. Impaling Finisher is phenomenal damage economy. You make one melee strike for one action and compare it against the AC of 2 targets. Now these targets must be directly in a line that leads from you to the back target. So if you are facing one creature and there's a creature directly behind it, you can strike through. You compare the single attack roll to both of their ACs and deal damage for each one you beat. And remember that this is a finisher, so this is gaining bonus damage from your precise strikes to multiple targets. Other than that, Impaling Finisher just counts as 2 attacks for your multiple attack penalty, so probably don't plan on attacking more after this. But hey, that gives you actions to get your panache back with a nice diplomacy check or something. Leading Dance is a new way for the Battle Dancer to gain panache, and if you're not a Battle Dancer, it's some mediocre battlefield control. You roll a performance check against an adjacent enemy's will DC. Should you critically fail, you fall prone. Should you normal fail, you can move 5 feet, but your target does not follow you. Should you succeed, you and your target both move 5 feet. Also, this movement doesn't trigger reactions. The failure's movement still does. And finally, the critical success is the same as the normal success, but you can move up to 10 feet. You must remain adjacent to each other. You know, like you're dancing. It's important to note that it only doesn't trigger reactions from your target. So if you're flanked and the guy you're not targeting has attack of opportunity, he can still strike you. But this is basically a way to shove with your performance skill, and if you're a Battle Dancer, you get panache. It's good for Battle Dancer. I don't think it's worth taking for anyone else, but it's still pretty okay. Swaggering Initiative is just phenomenal. When you roll initiative, you always get a +2 circumstance bonus and get to draw your weapon for free. This is sort of like quick draw, but you don't need to attack when you do it. This is really nice. It's a free action. You'll never not want to do this, probably. Twin Parry. If you're dual wielding, you can assume a 1-round stance to gain +1 to armor class, or if either of your weapons has the parry trait, +2 to armor class. It's basically the parry thing from 1st level, but only for dual wielding. 6th level, Agile Maneuvers basically treats your athletics skill actions as if they were agile attack actions. Your grapple, shove, and trip actions only have a -4, -8 multiple attack penalty instead of -5, -10. Really good for the gymnast. Attack of Opportunity. It's Attack of Opportunity. Combination Finisher is okay, but still kinda risky. Worth noting, and this is something I should have mentioned earlier because I actually didn't know it and I'm glad I checked, when you use an action with the finisher trait, you cannot use any more attack actions that turn. This is actually pretty unfortunate for something like the gymnast, as the shove, grapple, trip actions are attack actions. So once you use a finisher, you cannot attack again. That does give Combination Finisher a bit more leeway and a bit more of a reason to take it, as this lowers the multiple attack penalty of all of your finishers. It basically decreases it by 1, and even if it's an agile weapon, it still goes down by 1. So if you're using an agile weapon, which as a swashbuckler, you probably are, you only have a -3, -6 multiple attack penalty. Not bad at all. Precise Finisher is the feat I mentioned way earlier, where if you miss with Confident Finisher, you still deal your full precise strike damage of whatever d6 plus whatever bonus precision damage, even on a miss. Nice consistency there. Vexing Tumble is an interesting action. You stride up to half of your speed and make an acrobatics check against the reflex DC of every creature you passed, including those you started next to, during your movement. Should you critically succeed against one of them, you gain panache and your movement does not trigger reactions. Also, they are flat-footed to you until the end of your turn. Should you only normal succeed, you don't trigger reactions and gain panache, but they're not flat-footed. Should you critically fail, you stop the second you move into reach of that creature. So, the chance of you critically failing as a swashbuckler on acrobatics is low, but still up there. But hey, another great way to earn panache. It's great to see these feats that just give you more options and choices to get that feature you need. Level 8 gives us a ton of new finishers, starting with Bleeding Finisher. For one action, you attack, and if it hits, your target also takes bleed damage equal to your precise strike finisher damage. And remember, that's something d6. I think at level 8, that might be 3 or 4 d6 persistent bleed damage. That's awesome. The odds of them removing that in 1 or 2 turns are pretty low, and if they do remove it, you probably have panache back and can make it happen again. And even if it doesn't disappear from them, you can get panache back on the following turn and use it on someone else. This is awesome. I love persistent damage. Dual Finisher is a finisher that works with dual wielding. Surprising, I know. You basically take your 2 weapons and you use one finisher on 2 targets. If your second strike is non-agile, it does take a -2 penalty, and this does count as 2 towards your multiple attack penalty, but this basically allows you to make 2 finishers at once. Instead of the impaling finisher, which requires them to be right next to each other, this is 2 targets who are just anywhere adjacent to you within reach. Pretty solid. Nimble Roll is okay. It's an upgraded Nimble Dodge, and you need to have Nimble Dodge as a prerequisite, and you can gain the +2 bonus to your reflex saves by using Nimble Dodge against a reflex saving throw. The Swashbuckler already had Charmed Life at level 2, which let them gain +2 to any saving throw, and these are both reactions. You can't do both. The benefit of Nimble Roll is that if you succeed against the saving throw or succeed against a triggering attack with Nimble Dodge, you do get to move 10 feet. The unfortunate thing is that this movement does trigger reactions, so if your enemies have attacks of opportunity, sucks to be you. I do think Charmed Life is better than Nimble Roll, unfortunately. It just completely outclasses it. Stunning Finisher actually uses your class DC. You make a finishing strike, and if it hits, your opponent makes a Fortitude saving throw against your class DC. If they crit succeed, nothing happens, unfortunately. If they normal succeed, they can't use reactions until its next turn. If they fail, they become stunned 1, and if they crit fail, they're stunned 3, completely losing their next turn. Overall, with creatures in Pathfinder 2e having ridiculously high saving throws, I think this is the worst finisher so far. The reward is great, but aside from rolling a nat 1, a creature is typically not going to critically fail a saving throw unless it's a couple levels below you. So cool idea, but stunned 1, maybe occasionally on average, is not really worth using your whole finisher when you have some stuff like persistent bleed damage or multiple targets. Vivacious Bravado is fine, I guess. If you gained panache that turn, you can spend an action to gain your level plus charisma modifier of temporary hit points until the start of your next turn. So it doesn't last a whole long time. You'll probably get about 12 temporary hit points, which could soften a heavy blow. Again, if you're going 1v1 and they have no other targets, this is really good. But if you're in a swarm fight and you might get attacked, it's not as useful. If you can tank, if you can somehow force an enemy to attack you, this is really good. I do kind of wish it was a free action, though. Maybe that would be too powerful. Buckler Dance at level 10 is the first actual unique buckler support we've seen in the Swashbuckler. I don't count the little AC bonus at level 1. Buckler Dance is a really cool stance that as long as you're in it, your buckler is raised. This is the first time the Swashbuckler actually has a reason to wield a buckler, and it's really good. This is effectively a one-action raise shield, and then your shield is permanently raised. Daring Do is a solid upgrade to your panache. If you already have panache and perform a skill action that would normally grant you panache, you roll it with advantage. Every single time. You also still get the circumstance bonus to panache, so this is crazy good. If you demoralize one guy and gain panache, all future demoralize attempts while you still have panache are at freaking advantage. You can demoralize over and over and over and over again, and statistically, they'll start succeeding a lot. That's really good. Dueling Dance is basically the exact same as Buckler Dance. As long as you don't have anything in your offhand, you can spend an action to get into the stance, and you are always having Dueling Parry active, which is just +2 to AC, so it's literally the exact same as Buckler Dance. Reflexive Riposte is amazing for an aggressive Swashbuckler, as you get a second reaction per turn that can only be used for Opportune Riposte. This means if you have a GM that gets sort of obsessive with just, I attack, next enemy, I attack, and just keeps using that third multiple attack penalty, they're gonna crit fail. That -10 on an attack roll, that gives you so many opportunities for Opportune Riposte that Reflexive Riposte gets real good. 2 additional attacks at full bonus every turn? Yes, please. Targeting Finisher kind of brings back called shots of old, a very common house rule where you could target a specific part of a creature, usually take a penalty to your attack roll, but then force your GM to make up some kind of bonus because you attacked their neck with your longsword. With Targeting Finisher, you choose arms, head, or legs, and should you hit and deal damage with your finisher, you get a different effect. Should you target an arm or appendage, the target is enfeebled 2 until the end of its next turn, and if you critically hit, it is then enfeebled 1 for the next minute. Stupefied on the head, and a speed penalty on the legs. It basically comes down to, are they hitting too hard? Hit them in the arm. Are they casting too many spells? Hit them in the head. Are they trying to get away from you and your rapier? Hit them in the legs. Cut their Achilles tendon. Don't let them go. Cheat Death is absolutely ridiculous at level 12. As a reaction, should you be knocked to 0 hit points, you can use your reaction and stay standing at 1. You become doomed 1, which makes it so you completely die at 1 less. So if you are doomed 1, you are fully dead at dying 3. But you can use this as often as you want. This means that you can sort of safely use this 3 times without ever going unconscious. But then you're doomed 3, and if you go down, you die. And if you use your reaction and hit doomed 4, you also die. But this only lasts for 10 minutes. If you can safely get away with using this once or twice per combat, then you're gonna be fine. This goes away within 10 minutes, meaning your next encounter, probably, it's gonna be gone. You don't even get the wounded condition from this, which means in a perfect situation, if you were gonna go down 3 times and you cheated death all 3 times and didn't go down again, then after 10 minutes, you are not wounded and your doomed is gone and you are good as new. This is incredible. Very risky, but incredible. Mobile Finisher is just good action economy. You can stride and then strike for 1 action. Kind of lame for level 12, but it's a finisher, I guess it could be useful. What's nice is you can use it during any form of movement. Burrowing, climbing, flying, swimming, etc. But you have to have the movement type already. Flamboyant Leap for 2 actions requires you to be a master in athletics, have the Flamboyant Athlete feat, and also be capable of using a finisher, so you have to have panache. This is basically the same feat that a couple martial classes get, where you can make a long jump, attack anywhere along the long jump or high jump, and then make your strike and fall exactly where you decided to attack. The only difference is that you attack with a finisher instead of a normal strike. The big deal with this feat is that you can jump up to double your speed with this, which at this level is probably about 40 to 50, so you can jump about 100 feet and make a finisher. That's phenomenal. Impossible Riposte basically makes your attack of opportunity on Opportune Riposte ranged. You can knock things back at ranged attackers. The example it gives is if someone shoots Ray of Frost at you and critically fails, you slap the Ray of Frost back at the target. You roll your strike damage like normal, but your damage type becomes that of what you deflected. So if you deflect the Ray of Frost, you roll your same weapon die plus precision damage or whatever, and it deals it as cold damage to the source of the Ray of Frost. This is so stupid and cool, and I don't understand how it works. Someone shoots a crossbow or bow and arrow at you, and you just slice at the arrow, and it turns around and flies back at the target. Oh, it's stupid, and I love it. Perfect Finisher, I have nothing wrong with. I'm glad they waited to level 14. You just give yourself advantage on your finisher. Just increase the odds of getting that critical hit finisher for buckets of damage. Twin Defense. For one action, you get into a stance, and you get the benefits of Twin Parry, which is the exact same as Dueling Dance and Buckler's Dance. I don't know why this one's not called Dance. But yeah, same thing. Deadly Grace is a feat I've actually designed in the past before I even knew this feat existed. When you score a critical hit with an agile or finesse weapon that has a deadly die trait, you double the deadly die. For example, I believe a rapier has a deadly d8, maybe d10, and so if you critically hit with that, it deals 2d8 or 2d10, whatever it is. And even if the weapon doesn't have the deadly trait, it gets deadly d8 instead. I don't believe you double this deadly d8, but it still adds a d8 to all of your critical hits. The idea of this awesome critical hit swashbuckler is so appealing to me. Combine that with Perfect Finisher and just get all the things that buff your critical hits. Ugh, it's so good. And then at level 17, when a 19 on a d20 counts as a critical too, Felicitous Riposte at level 16. This gives your attacks of opportunity advantage. Cause why risk missing? Ever? Hey, you know what's really cool about high-level swashbucklers? They get advantage on everything! Incredible luck! You need to have taken Charmed Life at level 2, but when you use Charmed Life with the +2 circumstance bonus, you get to roll the saving throw twice and take the better result. Dude, high-level swashbucklers are dumb! Lethal Finisher, obviously probably the strongest finisher out there as far as raw damage. You make an attack, should you hit, they have to make a fortitude save against your class DC. And if you critically hit them, they treat this saving throw as 1 lower. Should they critically succeed, you deal 6 bonus damage. Should they normal succeed, you deal 6d6 bonus damage. Should they fail their saving throw, you deal 12d6 precision damage. And should they critically fail this saving throw, you deal 18d6 precision damage on top of all your other precision damage from your hit. If you critically hit with this, you can deal upwards of probably close to 30d6 damage. Amazing. And hilariously, if you attack like a gelatinous cube or anything ooze-like, they're immune to precision damage, so you deal so little. Parry and Riposte once again upgrades Opportune Riposte, and this is at a separate level from the level 16 that gives you advantage on all Opportune Ripostes. Now, so long as you have damaged the creature with a finisher on your last turn, and have an armor class bonus from a stance or a feat like Dueling Parry or Dueling Dance, you can auto Opportune Riposte them on a normal failed attack. Doesn't even have to be a critical failure. If they miss your AC by 1, you can strike back. Now, there's a few hoops to jump through. You need to have the stance up, and you need to have used a finisher on them last turn. But hey, that's still really good to be able to attack with advantage, maybe twice, because you have that bonus reaction. The Opportune Riposte build for Swashbucklers is so fun. We got 2 more, y'all, starting with Inexhaustible Counter Moves. At the start of every enemy's turn, you gain an extra reaction to use with Opportune Riposte. You know what this means? If you have set up perfectly with the level 18 feat to counterattack on normal fails, and they attack you 3 times, and they miss 3 times, you get to attack back with advantage at full bonus 3 freaking times. And if you took the feat that makes it at range, you can do this to any attack in the game. Dude, the Opportune Riposte Swashbuckler might be my favorite build I've ever seen. Holy cow. And you can do it with Attack of Opportunity too, not just Opportune Riposte. Dude, that would be so fun, building a Swashbuckler that basically does all of his stuff on the opponent's turns. I don't think it would come online till like level 6 to 10, but man, in a mid to high level campaign, that would be fun. I honestly think Panache Paragon kind of pales in comparison. That was really hard to say. Basically, you are permanently quickened, and you can only use that extra action on skill actions that grant you Panache. It's not bad by any means. It's still worthy of being a level 20 feat. It's definitely better for some subclasses than others, but you can always use it to tumble through. Being able to demoralize for free every turn, or being able to inflict flat-footed for free every turn, not too shabby. But just inexhaustible counter moves is just too fun, I'm sorry. And that is it for the Swashbuckler in the Pathfinder 2e Advanced Player's Guide. Good God, y'all, this is such a good class. I think there were maybe 2 feats in there where I'm like, this is fine. I don't think I've been this positive about a class ever. Why did I never look into this? Why did nobody tell me Swashbucklers would be my favorite class? Oh my god. I'm so paizo. Well freaking done. I am blown away. I am in love with this class. I plan to play one as soon as I can.
Now, my name is Nonata Montoya. You reviewed my class. Prepare to die.
Wait. Thank you so much to patrons. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, give me your firstborn child, and feel free to donate on my Patreon. It's okay. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And until next time, no, not once.